Here's what Speaker Johnson said. I have seen enough. This bill is even worse than we expected. It won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created. As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed, under this legislation, the border never closes. If this bill reaches the House, it will be dead on arrival.
Yeah, unfortunately, he would step out and be able to say that right away before, obviously, he had had a chance to be able to read it as well. Are we as Republicans going to have press conferences and complain the border's bad and then intentionally leave it open?
Does he say you need 3 weeks to read through it? He said no self-respecting senator should agree to vote on a 370-page bill this week.
It's interesting that he said he's already opposed to it. He needs 3 weeks to be able to read it, but he's already opposed to it. Again, people have got to be able to read it, go through it themselves. Don't just go off a Facebook post.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
And meanwhile, let's check in on the Maga truckers convoy at the border.
Like America doesn't believe in the Constitution.
Watch, hey! Peaceful protest. Back up. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Pedestrians have hey! You're on camera. You want to go to jail?
You want to go to jail?
I think if there was ever a video that encompasses the modern day Republican Party that fully embraces MAGA, it was this. Wearing shirts that range from saying Jesus wept, fighting each other over who gets to be the most outraged at children seeking asylum. Just as Jesus intended, right? But this is what you come to expect, because their elected representatives aren't doing much more than infighting either.
Why would we do anything right now to help her with that 33%? Do you believe if Joe Biden's approval rating was at 53%, we would even be talking about the border?
It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want to change in law because it's a presidential election year. We all have an oath to the Constitution, and we have a commitment to say we're going to do whatever we can to be able to secure the border.
Fewer than 24 hours after a long-awaited bipartisan border deal and foreign aid package was unveiled in the Senate, opposition is already rapidly mounting in the chamber, making it increasingly likely that the bill, well, it won't survive a key vote that is expected this week. It would take only 41 senators voting against the bill to sink the deal in an upcoming procedural vote, and there are already 21 senators who have signaled publicly that they oppose this bill. And spearheading the effort to pay nothing but lip service to an issue that he prefer remain unresolved is House Speaker Donald Trump. Sorry, my apologies, House Speaker Mike Johnson, who continues to attack the deal.
Mr. Speaker,
he does have executive authority right now.
Mr. Speaker, you talk about H.R. 2. Again, Senator Lindsey Graham, your Republican colleagues say that that stands no chance of passing through the Senate. You have an opportunity to do something right now about the situation at the border, which you've been calling for new legislation on the border since you first took office. But let me ask you about Donald Trump. He said any Republican who votes for this deal should be ashamed of themselves. You've said you speak to him frequently and that you've discussed this deal with him, quote, at length. Is Donald Trump calling the shots here, Mr. Speaker?
And lead negotiator for the GOP, Senator Lankford, went into the lion's den of all places to express his thoughts on Johnson's vocal concerns.
Here's what Speaker Johnson said. I have seen enough. This bill is even worse than we expected. It won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created. As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed, under this legislation, the border never closes. If this bill reaches the House, it will be dead on arrival. Your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, he would step out and be able to say that right away before, obviously, he had had a chance to be able to read it as well and to be able to go through it. The key aspect of this, again, is are we as Republicans going to have press conferences and complain the border's bad and then intentionally leave it open? After the worst month in American history in December, now we've got to actually determine, are we going to just complain about things, or are we going to actually address and to change as many things as we can? If we have the shot, and it's amazing to me, if I go back 2 months ago and say we had the shot under a Democrat president to dramatically increase detention beds, deportation flights, lock down the border, to be able to change the asylum laws, to be able to accelerate the process, no one would have believed it. And now no one actually wants to be able to fix it. and says, I don't want to even debate it, I don't want to discuss it. We have to decide as Republicans, what are we going to actually do about the border? Leave it open or actually leave it closed?
Senator Mike Lee said, not only does he say he needs 3 weeks to read through it, he said no self-respecting senator should agree to vote on a 370-page bill this week. Any 41 senators can prevent the bill from proceeding. If you agree that senators should have this bill for at least a few weeks, and certainly more than a few days before voting on it, say so. You understand where he's coming from, right? Don't you guys have a procedural vote this week? And you're going to vote on the bill by the end of the week?
So we actually have this bill came out yesterday, Sunday. The first procedural vote is Wednesday, and that procedural vote is literally just open it up to be able to go through it and to be able to say, are we going to debate it this week? That's what Senator Lee is actually talking about. It's interesting that he said he's already opposed to it. He needs 3 weeks to be able to read it, but he's already opposed to it. Again, people have got to be able to read it, go through it themselves. Don't just go off a Facebook post somewhere what the bill says. This dramatically changes asylum. It dramatically changes deportations. We no longer have a 10-year backlog. It builds more wall. Those are the key things that it actually does. But read it for yourselves. Don't just believe what's online.
Before taking his Rhino tour, come on, Trump's definitely going to call it that, to the Fox News Full Sugar edition, Newsmax, where he reminded the host that while Trump claims continuously to have, quote, the most secure border in history, it is simply not true.
I would also remind folks during the Trump administration, we also had days of more than 4,000 people that were illegally crossing the border under the Trump administration in 2019, and they were struggling because there's gaps and loopholes in the law.
Yeah, but Senator, you know that Donald Trump, we were at a 45-year low in illegal crossings under Donald Trump, and that's just a fact. I've got the evidence to
dramatically fewer.
A 45-year low under Donald Trump in 2019.
We also had days of 3,000, 4,000, 4,500 that were happening.
But nothing like what we've seen right now. Okay, let me just
trying to figure out how to be able to implement it.
Donald Trump did endorse you,
he did.
But regardless of that, why do you think he's going after you and this border bill, considering this is the most, and I've been in this town for a lot longer than you have, this is the most conservative immigration compromise that I have ever seen come to this level. Previous efforts under Bush and under Obama were far more permissive, far more liberal than this. Why do you think Trump's going after you?
And obviously, a chaotic border is helpful to him in the process on that.
Now, I must preface that this is also the same Republican who said that Trump's recent $83 million defamation suit for a sexual assault that he was found liable of committing doesn't give him pause.
$3 million to a person that a jury found he defamed after a separate jury found that he had sexually assaulted her. Does it give you any pause about him returning to office?
It doesn't. Obviously, these are legal cases. I don't jump in the middle of a legal case.
But still, when veteran Republicans are blatantly lambasting their own colleagues' party over country politics, you know that there's something inherently wrong here. But as Hakeem Jeffries pointed out over the weekend, they're just following the breadcrumbs that have been left by Donald Trump.
You know, we need more common sense in Washington, D.C., less conflict and less chaos. We're in a period of divided government. That means we should be trying to find bipartisan common ground. House Democrats have made that clear. On any issue, we'll work with our Republican counterparts when it makes sense in terms of delivering real results for the American people. How can a bill be dead on arrival and extreme MAGA Republicans in the House haven't even seen the text? They don't even know what solutions are being proposed in terms of addressing the challenges at the border. House Republicans at this point are wholly owned subsidiaries of Donald Trump. They're not working to find real solutions for the American people. They are following orders from the former president. That's the height of irresponsibility. That's what the American people dislike about Washington, D.C. at this moment.
His entire strategy right now is to pray for chaos and wish for the demise of his fellow Americans, that many of whom consider him a patriot, just so that he can better his campaign. He wants the market to crash, he wants gas to go up, and he wants chaos at the border.
When there's a crash, I hope it's going to be during this next 12 months, because I don't want to be Herbert Hoover. The one president, I just don't want to be Herbert Hoover.
He's acknowledging that my economy is doing pretty darn well because he doesn't want that to continue. And by the way, the idea that he wants to see a crash in the next 12 months, doesn't want to be Herbert Hoover, you have to understand, he's already Herbert Hoover.
He's not offered a single solution. Solutions to him reside in the same place that his Obamacare alternative currently resides.
Newer subject, but Obamacare is a disaster. And I said, we're gonna do something about it. I saved Obamacare.
Donald Trump still does not have a health care plan. And so he's starting to project the lack of a plan onto Democrats, once again vowing to repeal Obamacare.
So we can repeal and replace. We're going to have a health care plan that's going to be second to none. We have 2 plans coming in.
It's been some years since some of those clips and still nothing. No plan.
But the thing is, he doesn't need solutions, and that's the sad part, because Republicans don't run on solutions. They run on problems.
From the American Rescue Plan, shots in arms, money in pockets, kids back in school, rescuing the economy from a once-in-a-century pandemic and allowing the American economy to emerge as the most advanced in the world. Yes, more needs to be done in terms of addressing affordability and the inflationary pressures, and President Biden has a vision to do that. Infrastructure and investment, past clean water in every community, bringing domestic manufacturing jobs back home to the United States of America, lowering the price of insulin to $35 per month for millions of Americans when it had cost $4,000 a year. This is an incredible track record of results and accomplishments.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.